Hi, Scary Recaps here. Today, I'm going to explain the movie Watcher from 2022. Beware of spoilers. Julia, a young American woman, moves to Bucharest with her Romanian husband, Francis. On the way to their new house, the taxi driver asks Julia if she speaks Romanian, at which Julia replies no. The taxi driver says something, and Francis gets upset. He says that the taxi driver hates her, but the taxi driver says that Julia is beautiful. When Francis and Julia enter their new apartment, the landlady asks Julia if she likes the house. Julia smiles and says yes. When the landlady leaves, Francis and Julia make out on the couch. Later, in the middle of the night, Julia gets out of bed and starts looking at the neighbouring apartments. She notices a person watching her. Francis calls Julia back to bed. In the morning, Julia starts taking self-lessons of Romanian in order to impress Francis. She is seen walking in Bucharest, getting used to the city, but she feels a little lonely as Francis is most of the time away at work. One night, as she returns home, she finds the landlady and a man inside her house. Julia doesn't understand what the landlady says, but gets the idea that they're there to fix the lights. Julia dresses up and waits for Francis to have dinner together. She turns off the lights and goes to the window, where she sees a man staring at her from another apartment. Francis walks in and turns on the lights. Julia gives Francis a little toy figure of Count Dracula, and they both admit that it is a silly gift. The couple goes out for a walk, and they come across ambulances near their house. Julia sees a man who is staring at her, sitting in one of the ambulances. The next day, Julia and Francis hear in the news that a young woman was murdered the previous night, and that the man in the ambulance was the one who found her body. Francis starts talking about his work, but Julia isn't listening, looking concerned with the murder case. She mentions to him about the stranger that is looking at her almost every night. That evening, Francis and Julia have a friend and his wife over for dinner. Julia learns that the woman who was murdered was decapitated by a notorious serial killer known as the Spider. As Francis and his friends speak in Romanian, Julia feels a little cut off and decides to take out the garbage. She then meets Irina, a friendly and carefree neighbour. The next day, Julia sees a video with a woman who has allegedly survived an attack from the Spider and is worried. Feeling that she is being followed, Julia enters a movie theatre. A man sits behind her, and Julia leaves frightened by his presence. Having quit smoking, Julia goes to the supermarket and asks for a pack of cigarettes. She changes her mind though, and goes to shop for groceries when she notices a man is following her. Scared, Julia hides and promptly leaves through the back door. Julia talks about this with Francis, and he goes to reassure her that everything is perfectly safe. As Francis kisses Julia, she withdraws. Francis decides to then take Julia to the supermarket and ask to see the surveillance cameras in order to check out this stalker. Watching the videos, however, Francis isn't convinced that the man is stalking his wife. Before they leave, Julia takes a photo of the man in the footage. As Francis leaves for work, Julia sits and watches everyone who is coming and going in the block of flats across the street. During the night, as Francis hasn't shown up from work, Julia calls him, feeling worried. Suddenly, a knock on her door alarms her. Julia sees an elderly lady who is talking in Romanian, but she doesn't understand a word. Irina from down the hall informs Julia that the old lady, whose name is Eleanor, is looking for her missing cat, Elvis. After that, Irina invites Julia for a drink. The two women hang out and chat about various things. Irina shows Julia her gun she is hiding in the coffee table, saying that it's for her own protection. When Julia returns to her apartment, she sees that the man from across the street is sitting at his window. Not sure if they're staring at her or not, Julia raises her hand to wave, and the man waves back. When Francis returns, Julia tells him about the stalker, and Francis calls the police to end this. Julia shows the officer a photo of the man who is watching her, saying that it might be him. The officer, accompanied by Francis, goes to the man's apartment to check him out. Francis returns shortly and tells Julia that there was no one there. Julia is frustrated that Francis doesn't believe her. She tells him that they should leave, but Francis says no, thinking that she is becoming paranoid with this entire story. The next day, Julia follows the mysterious man from the supermarket, watching his every move. Julia ends up in a strip club called Museum. There, she discovers that the strange man is working as a janitor. Julia also finds Irina there working as a stripper. In one of her breaks, Julia admits to Irina that Francis thinks that she is overreacting with the Watcher, but Irina supports her by saying that it's better to be safe than sorry. Later that night, Julia has a terrible nightmare in which a man chokes her with a sheet. She wakes up and hears a strange noise from Irina's apartment. Worried that Irina is under attack by the spider, Julia yells at the landlady to enter Irina's apartment. Inside, however, they find no one but Eleanor's cat, Elvis. The next day, the landlady complains to Francis about his wife. Irina's ex-husband, Christian, soon comes searching for Irina, and Julia helps him by calling Irina on her mobile phone. They both hear the phone ringing from inside the apartment. Before he leaves, Julia asks from Christian if he can go and check the apartment across the street. Christian bangs on the door, but no one answers, and when Julia knocks on the door, an old man answers. Leaving the block of flats, Julia sees the stalker staring at her from the stairs. A little while later, an officer and the alleged stalker, whose name is Daniel, come to Julia and Francis's apartments with accusations of Julia harassing him. The officer suggests ending this misunderstanding without any further problems, and Julia and Daniel shake hands. Francis then tells Julia that the spider has been caught, revealed to be a plumber that had found the dead body the first night. At a company party, Julia is enraged by a bad joke made on her by Francis and his colleagues and storms out. Francis catches up with her and mentions that he is sick and tired of this fantasy of hers of being stalked. Julia leaves and goes to the subway. Inside the train, she sees Daniel and tries to get off, but the metro stops and Daniel comes close, telling her that they have stopped because a dog or some other animal has been found on the rails. He tells her that he is taking care of his sick father and that he had thought that Julia was waving at him because she was interested in him. But that only made him more furious, and more so when she didn't even apologize to him for giving him false hope. As Daniel is talking, Julia thinks the plastic bag he is carrying contains a severed head. Mortified and scared to death, Julia exits the metro and quickly gets home. Julia starts to pack, determined to leave Bucharest for good, when she hears music coming from Irina's apartment. She goes over and finds that the door is open. Julia enters and sees Irina's headless body on a chair, and soon after, she is attacked by Daniel, who is actually the spider. Daniel puts a plastic bag over her head and knocks her out. Julia soon regains consciousness and panics. Daniel tells her to relax and mentions how he kills Irina. The night the landlady and Julia entered Irina's apartment, Daniel and Irina were hiding in the closet. They would have found them if they had looked a little longer. In the meantime, Francis returns home and finds out that Julia was planning to leave. Julia hears him and attempts to scream, but Daniel slices the side of her throat. Julia starts to crawl away, trying to reach the gun in the coffee table. She has lost too much blood, however, and soon stops halfway. Daniel lies next to her, staring at her as she slowly dies. Francis calls Julia and hears her mobile phone ringing in Irina's apartment. He walks to it and sees Daniel exiting the apartment. For a moment there, Francis is baffled, looking at Daniel calmly putting on his jacket. Suddenly, Daniel is shot in the shoulder. He turns around and is shot multiple times until he's dead. A blood-covered Julia, who had faked her death, walks out of the apartment and indignantly looks at Francis.